Across the pond with Barry and Chad.
Good morning and welcome back to yet another episode of Across the Pond. Barry, we are now fully into the swing of 2021 and some of us would like a bit of a refund on our 8 or 9 day trial that we've had so far.
What a crazy week, Jay. What a crazy week. Lots of chaos going on around the world. It seems that we are still living in 2020 in some way. Maybe we haven't got to 2021 just yet, Chad.
Yeah, pretty crazy indeed. Well, everyone, welcome to Across the Pond. I'm Chad in London and tuned in via Zoom is my co-host Barry Maurice sitting there in Johannesburg, South Africa. It's a nice, wonderful, bright, sunny morning on his side. And for me, I don't want to open out the windows because it's still very dark outside. Nevertheless, strap in. We've got a cracking episode for you today.
Be our guest, put our podcast to the test. Be our guest, be our guest, be our guest.
Barry, we said we were going to this year focus a lot more on getting some interesting people on our podcast and just people that we are interested in ourselves personally and want to learn from, right? And, just get our listeners as well to get some great insights from these wonderful thinkers. And today we have someone who I'm a massive fan on, Mitch Lally, who's tuned in also via Zoom. Barry, do you want to give him a quick introduction before we start?
Sure thing. So Mitch Lally is an incredible photographer and videographer, like you said, coming out of Australia. So we're coming to you over lots of ponds today, which is very, very exciting. He's got about 14,000 followers on Instagram and over 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. He's really building a really cool community based around really, really high quality photography and videography. So I know, Chad, this is right up your alley. He's done a lot of cool stuff and we're really excited to chat to him about creativity, about his process, about his journey so far. And yeah, I'm just really excited to have our first guest of 2021.
Welcome, Mitch.
Thank you, guys. It's an honor to be the first guest of 2021 and to see you guys. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining. Like we said, always good to get as many different ponds at the same time. Always really cool. I mean, just to kick this one off, you mentioned yesterday where you staying. So you basically, as far as I understand, are in Brisbane, and you guys have finally sort of joined the lockdown life that we've been living for a long time already.
Yeah, that's right. And thanks to you guys because we have had a scare of the UK strain of coronavirus,
right.
Which I think a lot of people are panicking about because it's supposed to be more contagious than what we've had here previously. So we've had one case come into our city and then they've subsequently locked down the entire city for 3 days. So from Friday till Monday, we all have to stay inside. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment and we're just past halfway through. So yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, when it comes to these lockdown things, we just got to take it one day at a time. I mean, I'm in basically indefinite one at the moment, but it's at least until mid-February. Hopefully we get out there before that. But anyway, we're not here to talk about COVID or lockdowns or any of that cool stuff. We're talking about creativity, right? We're talking about the things that keep us on this earth living our passions. So let's start about creativity just in a general context. What does it mean to you? And why did you decide to basically pick this path in terms of your career?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think I've always identified or seen myself as a creative person. I've never been particularly book smart in the way of like being able to retain information. But when it comes to, I guess, thinking about or creating new things, that's always sort of sparked my brain, I guess you could say. So since I was younger, I just have always been interested in doing creative things, whether it's been music or art or skateboarding. I think it is also sort of a creative outlet, I think. And what was the other question? Like, how did I start?
Yeah, so I guess that ticks off the, why did you pick creativity as your path? But just more broadly, like what does creativity mean to you? I mean, I think a lot of people, are wondering whether they themselves have any creative elements within them. Do you have to always create something from scratch? Like what does creativity mean to you, broadly speaking?
Yes, that's really interesting because I was having this conversation with somebody just recently, and I feel like creativity is problem solving. I think fundamentally creativity is problem solving, but it's a different kind of problem solving where I feel like traditionally, you think about mathematics or science, problem solving is, you either have an incorrect answer or a correct answer, and then you test that theory. Whereas I feel like creativity is a form of problem solving where the outcome or the answer is not necessarily right or wrong. It's all subjective. And I feel like creativity is just, I guess, bringing something new to the world, something that expresses, a certain emotion or feeling or idea. And for me, that's really exciting. I think that, we grow up, we're always, I guess, taught that, learning or creativity or finding your way in this world is about like having the correct answer. But yeah, I feel like expression is so open and it's beautiful. And yeah, I'm honored to be a creative and I love doing it. And that's what I've basically devoted my life to it. So yeah.
And I think the beauty of the internet these days is that you don't have any gatekeepers that have to give you permission to create anymore. You don't have to convince some record executive or some sort of production company or any of that. You can just go and use channels like YouTube, use all these platforms to create for yourself and find your little niche audience wherever they are in the world, whatever they're interested in, and really make a career out of it. So how do you think about that? Like when you were growing up, did you see creativity as a career path, or was it just kind of something you really enjoyed at that stage? And at what part of your life did you realize, hold on a minute, I can actually turn this into something I can pay my bills at the end of the month?
Yeah, so I always thought that I was going to be a creative, and I didn't know whether it was going to be part of my career or not. But I was always urged, like from a young age, by my parents to get an education. So whether that was like doing really well in school or going to university, which was the path that I chose, I knew that I didn't want to do something that I didn't like as a career. And so I guess around the age of like 20 to 23, I decided that like I really wanted to start pursuing a creative endeavor. And at that time it was music. And cool. I wanted to make that into a career. I just wasn't sure how. And yeah, I think what you said about like the whole internet opening up the world of creatives and all that it's very, I guess it was good timing for me, because when I started out, I started doing weddings. So in the beginning, I bought a camera for the purpose of documenting like my music. I wanted to make a YouTube channel about like making music. And I began to realize that I wasn't very good at the whole filming thing and I wanted to get better at it. So I started researching, and then that's what sucked me into the world of making videos. And really, at the time, because all of my friends were into music, I started filming, music videos and all those sorts of things. And then one day my friend said, "Oh, how about you film my sister's wedding?" And so I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll give that a go." I've never been to a wedding, let alone, filmed one, but I'll give it a go. And, I mean, since then, it all just took off for me, and that became my full-time job. But as you said, no one ever really asked me for my piece of paper, like my credentials or anything like that. It was, and a lot of people ask me, "Oh, should I go to film school?" And I just sort of say, well, like it, I mean, it depends, but probably not, because, the world is different now. And, you can have a portfolio online of all of your work, and that's all that you need. You don't need to say that you went to university or that you studied formally or that you have a mentor or anything like that. You can simply just get going. And I think that's amazing. I love it. That was a really long rant, but hopefully that went to the place that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it definitely did. I mean, that's an amazing story, and I guess actually a little bit of an insight, something that I had no idea about you in that musical interest. And I mean, just in terms of that, let's explore that for a little bit. What exactly were you going to do? Are you more into the kind of producing of music? Do you actually play an instrument or sing? What was your entry into that world?
Yeah, so I've always liked music ever since I was younger. I'd say that's like my number one passion in life. I think people would look at me and they'd say, "Oh, like, of course, like he's definitely photography and videos is like number one thing." But really music is the thing that, gets me most excited and makes me happy. And I started out being really into playing the guitar. So in high school, I got really into playing the guitar, and I was in a few bands playing some like sort of punk and more heavy music. And that was sort of my first exposure to music, apart from obviously doing music lessons in primary school, playing the violin and the piano and stuff like that. And then it's sort of, my taste sort of morphed, and I began to listen to a lot more hip hop music and a lot more electronic music. And then I sort of got into producing music more in sort of that hip hop and electronic sort of vein. So I guess a combination of hip hop and electronic music was what I was producing at the time. And there were some people on YouTube that I was really inspired by, and I wanted to be like them. And so I started thinking about making videos about the music that I was making.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. And like Barry said, you've now built up this incredible community that you got on YouTube. And I mean, one of those creators that I've found extremely accessible, just in terms of, you actually are genuinely there to help people out and help people learn as well, which I, of course, appreciate. So obviously now you're at that point where you've transitioned from music into videography and photography, and for me are almost the authority on like behind the scenes portrait shoots. The kind of shots and stuff that you get are just incredible. Just in terms of the wedding stuff as well. I think you filmed one of your friends out in the Alps or something. Incredibly scenic background, and I mean that little clip just alone for me was one of the most scenic and just most extraordinary kind of wedding sort of summaries that I've seen in a long time. So in terms of that, in terms of getting to that, you very clearly have an incredibly distinctive style in terms of the look of your videos. How did you develop that? I think a lot of us get in this kind of rut of getting to the edit room and you have so many different options of where you want this thing to go. You've clearly developed this distinctive style. How did you get there?
Yeah. I gotta say that I have been in that situation so many times where I get to the edit and I just have no idea what I'm doing. I would say that like the vast majority of my career so far has been that moment. And only recently I have found my style and become comfortable and stuff in that style. To me, it just comes down to making a decision about who you are and what you want to create. And that's a hard thing to do because in the world of like social media and watching YouTube videos every single day, we get inspired and influenced in so many different directions by so many different things. And one day you could be like, oh wow, this creator, their style is amazing and this and that and whatever. And then the next day it could be something completely different. And I recognized that in myself and I thought, well, I'm being pulled in all these different directions. One day I'm going to have to just be like that other person or, this person or that person and have a style and and so I kind of just realized that. And I thought it was similar to when I decided that like filming weddings was going to be my full-time job. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to do this and everything else I'm just going to say no to. And so, and I felt like at that point, I felt like that was one of the best decisions I made was just to cut everything else out and just focus on that one thing. And that's what led to like a lot of my growth and a lot of my, I guess, like happiness at the end of the day. So I realized that with the photography and the video, and I thought, who are the people that I really, when I see their work and I watch their work and I just really feel connected to it, I really feel like energized by it. And I wrote those few people down and I looked at their work and I thought, how did they achieve that? And I just worked really hard. It was like a couple of years where I was just like trying to, every single time I'd sit down to edit, I would just, refer back to their work and just think, okay, they've done this and they've done that. And it wasn't just one person that I was sort of like trying to copy. It was just mainly like a few people, like maybe 3 or 4 different creators that I was like, and I sort of, I guess, came to the middle where, I took the similar colors from one person's videos or photos, and then the style of composition from another photographer, and then the subject matter from another photographer, and I blended them all together into a style that I felt was my own. And I think to this day, like it's still being, I guess, developed. And I think that a style is always going to be a work in progress. It's never going to be something that's concrete. But at least like know where you're going, what direction you're going in. I think that's the most important thing. And like stay true to what makes you feel most happy and most like, I guess, what expresses the things that you want to express to the world, stay true to those things. That's probably the best answer I can give.
And just moving on to more of like a storytelling element, because obviously you want the things to look as good as they can, and the colors and the composition, all that matters. But at the end of the day, you're trying to tell stories with these pieces of art. How do you think about that storytelling? Because I think for a lot of photographers and videographers, they focus so much on the gear, they focus so much on the bits and pieces and all the nitty gritty details that makes it like as an exciting field as it is. But at the end of the day, you're trying to move people, you're trying to like create emotion, especially in a wedding situation. Like there's so much emotion on that day, and there's so many stories to tell. How do you think about that storytelling, and is it a key focus of yours? How have you kind of developed that skill over time?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm still struggling with now in terms of the YouTube video stuff. And it's something that this year is actually going to be a big focus for me, is creating stories and not just creating videos. I can talk about it in terms of the weddings because I've done that for 8 years, and I feel like I've gotten to a point where I can say that, like, I am a storyteller in that sort of sense. Yep. And I think the most important thing to me was when I met a couple and when I had the opportunity to tell their story, I would always focus on what made them unique, and try to really exploit that, I guess, is like make that the forefront of the video, because every single wedding video is pretty similar when you think about it. A couple, they met in a certain way and they have, a certain personalities, and then they come together and they go to the altar, and the priest or the pastor or the celebrant says this and that. Then they have a party after, and friends get up and say stuff. But it's really like in between those moments, like really digging into what makes them, like, I guess what makes them compatible, and how they came together. And I feel like digging into that and really caring about that for my couples actually made their wedding day better, because they were like, oh, hang on a second. Someone is like cares about our story and thinks our story is amazing. And then they're going to like present that into a video. Like, this is cool. Like, and they start thinking about their story and they start embracing it, and they see it from sort of like an outsider's point of view, which I think is really cool as well. So I think it's really digging into what makes the couple unique, or what makes the subject unique. And, yeah, and then when their friends and family see the video, they're like, "Oh wow, that video was like, that wasn't just a video. That was a video about you guys." And I didn't know that, like, that happened on your first date, or I didn't know that happened when you guys proposed to each other, or whatever it was. And just bringing out these little details. I think that's what makes a story come alive, is the details. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That really is. Just being able to, like you say, get to know the couple in that kind of way. And I think a lot of wedding videographers would just take this transactionally, right? They would literally look at every wedding as, like you say, just a kind of series of events, and just churn out the goods without really thinking about these really important little stories in between. So the fact that you go that extra length to truly understand the couple and understand their journey and present it in that way, I'm sure comes across amazingly. So let's just talk then about one of the phenomena you just mentioned there, Mitch, which is that sometimes we take for granted the experiences that we've gone through ourselves. We don't think that they're very noteworthy, right? Because we've gone through them ourselves. And so for a lot of people, when it comes to starting a YouTube channel, or starting sharing whatever journey it is that they're on, they themselves don't really think it's too interesting, because they're living it. They're doing it every single day. But as you just mentioned, from an outsider's perspective, it's always fascinating to get an insight into people's development, right, and learning new things. So how would you kind of describe that philosophy, and how it kind of got you into realizing that your insights and your journey really, really can help a whole lot of people out there learn new things?
Yeah, I think I've always recognized that, because I've had people who helped me, and I've been interested in other people's journeys and stories of how they came to be, and came to the place that they were at. And I think very early on, when I started my business, I had sort of like, I had an apprentice, and I wanted to teach him everything that I knew, and so that he could help me in my business, and then I could also, I guess, give him a career in something that he loved to do. And I guess that was sort of like the genesis of me wanting to share my information and share the things that I'd learnt with other people. Also, I'd been through the struggle of really just like having the people around me in my life tell me that, oh, you'll never make money as a creative and you'll never make it in this world. You know, you'll always need to have a backup plan, or you'll always need to, you know, have a degree to fall back on. And I see, you know, a lot of very creative, very talented people being told that story, that narrative over and over again. And I want to be there to tell them that you can do it, because I mean, I'm not particularly special. Like I'm not talented. I'm not, you know, particularly gifted in any way, and I did it. So I just wanted to be there as like not just an example, but hopefully somebody who offers up some kind of advice and tips and stuff along the way. And I guess that's what really drives me to make YouTube videos, is really just to help other people see that like it's possible to, I guess, make it, quote unquote, make it in this creative world.
Yeah, I mean that's 100% true, and Barry and I both followed that more traditional path that you mentioned, which is you get the backup first, and then what you find is you're in this wonderful career, and you know you're earning enough money and all that kind of thing. But here we are. We're creating stuff on the weekends, and you know, it's one of those kind of inner yearns that just doesn't die, right? If you want to make stuff, it just doesn't die. So, how important do you think it is to feed that yearn? And you know, what sort of advice would you give people? You know, when they do have loads of ambitions, but of course have gone the more traditional path and have a 9 to 5.
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot, because I guess what you're really talking about there is that sort of transition from going from a very stable life to a life that is, you know, a little bit, there's a lot of uncertainties. And so that transition, and I was really lucky where I had a job with my dad actually, and I was studying at the same time. And so, you know, he was pretty used to me coming and going whenever I wanted to. But my job basically went from 5 days a week to 4 days a week to 3 days a week to, you know, 1 day every now and then, to basically just gone completely freelance. So I was lucky in that respect. But I guess up until that point, you know, I just became the guy that everybody knew in my friend circle, you know, the video guy, the photo guy. And I think that once you start doing good work and you show the people around you that you're passionate about it and that you want to do it, opportunities will just start to come to you. And I know it's different for everyone in different parts of the world. And, you know, I might have gotten really, really lucky with where I was at the time. You know, I was very young and I had a lot of friends who were getting married around me. So that really helped to, I guess, propel the business. But yeah, I guess it's just planning that exit strategy long term, making sure that, you know, because it could be very slow, it could be very fast. It really depends on how lucky you get. But I mean, if you're putting the work in every single weekend, in any, basically what I would do when I was working, I would work a full day, and then I would come home half an hour, have some food, and then I would go to the gym, and then I would get back from the gym around 9 p.m. and I would go on YouTube until sometimes 1 a.m. in the morning, looking up tutorials, learning how to shoot photos and video and stuff like that. And then I would get up at 6 the next day and go back to work. So I was like operating on 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night, not very healthy. And then on the weekends, I would go out and I would film concerts. I would film birthday parties. I'd photograph anything that I could basically get my hands on. I was just shooting the entire time. And yeah, there were points where I thought like, I'm going to kill myself doing this, but it was like, I loved it. Like I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. And if you want it that bad, it'll come. It'll eventually come. It's just like, be ready and plan your exit. I've got a friend at the moment actually who is working full time. His contract is ending at the end of this month actually, but he's working full time and he started getting these little jobs, you know, like this company gave him $2,000 to shoot for this product shoot. You know, there's a model who wants to build her portfolio. She's offering him, you know, a couple $100 to shoot here and there. And his jobs have just been slowly building over time. And now he's at the point where he's like, well, at the end of this month, should I try to get another contract working for this company, or should I just go and get a 3-day a week retail job, just something that's gonna, I guess, pay his rent and whatnot, and really just start going hard into picking up more of these freelance jobs. And I'm sort of like, definitely, I'm like pushing him in that direction because I see the talent, I see the potential, I see the passion, and yeah, he's like almost got that exit strategy like worked out. And so I'm really excited to see where that goes.
I think it's such a key point because I think a lot of creatives have this idea that they have to burn the boats. They have to kind of throw everything into the river and start afresh and just kind of live that starving artist lifestyle. But they really are ways and there are guidelines, and there's proof that you can do this stuff in your after hours if you have the work ethic and you're willing to put the work in. So that's a really important thing for a lot of us, I think, is that you don't have to burn everything to the ground and start afresh and try to make it. You can try and build it on the side. And like you say, when it gets to an organic level where it's growing to a point where, okay, I physically cannot do all of this anymore, then you can start to make that decision a bit later down the line. I wanted to pick up on one of your points there, talking about creation versus consumption. I think with a lot of people, it's very easy to sit on YouTube and watch tutorials for hours and hours and hours and hours and think that you're getting somewhere. But if you're not actually going out and actually doing the shooting, if you're not actually going and testing your skills and actually creating stuff yourself, you can kind of trick yourself into thinking that you're making progress, where in essence, all you're just doing is watching other people's stuff. How do you think about that balance between learning from other people and trying to consume other pieces of content to see what resonates and see what's really good, versus actually getting out there for hours and hours, like you say, on the weekends and shooting your own stuff?
Yeah, so that is actually a big mistake that I see a lot of beginner creatives making, and that is delving too far into the consumption of whether it's tutorials or watching other people's work and not doing the work enough themselves. I definitely think there needs to be a good split between investing in your own craft and in your own education about what you're trying to do. But I guess there's a point of going overboard where you're not actually creating and you're just sort of hooked on it's a lot of what I see with people who are sort of hooked on self-help. They read the books and they listen to the podcasts and they do all the goal setting, but they don't do very much goal smashing, you know what I mean? And that is sort of I think that's not just in the creative industry, that's ubiquitous. And I think that like the old saying goes, practice makes perfect, right? And I've filmed close to 500 weddings, and
wow,
I can go to a wedding now and not feel nervous. Just go there, stay completely cool and calm the entire time. These really tense moments where I used to be sweating gallons, I'm now just like cool as a cucumber. And I think that like there's like just the reps. You just need the reps in order to get there. And I think it's just like maybe just setting small goals for yourself rather than, just being like, oh, I want to create the best stuff ever. Just being like, I'm going to create a 1-minute video that has this effect in it, or that has this storyline to it, or that has this shot transition. And just setting those little goals and being like, I'm just going to create this one piece of content. I'm going to get it done and I'm going to show it to my friends. They can give me some feedback. Then I'm going to go back to the drawing board, back to the computer, and I'm going to learn the next thing. Just not trying to like consume like 6 months worth of information and then make that into one video, your like magnum opus video of the year, with all of that stuff in it. Is just like set small goals, little chunks at a time, and just learning. But I think it is important. It is important to always be thirsty for education and thirsty for knowledge.
Yep.
That'll get you pretty far, I think.
Yeah, and I suppose now that we all have all of this extra free time on our hands, we certainly can invest in our crafts in the way that you mentioned. Okay, so obviously as we're running out a little bit of time, I wanted to, on a more personal level, the way that you're going to balance your time this year. I know you also have a very keen focus on running, which you are doing in a really big way of late. And then, of course, your friendship group and, just getting that wonderful, meaningful time with friends. So how do you balance your time up on those fronts as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, on the friend front, I think I've sort of built a friendship group that all have a common interest. So often we'll go out together for coffee, and we'll all bring our laptops and we'll sit there and edit. We'll show each other our work and stuff like that. Awesome. And that's a really great way to like stay productive, but also obviously have quality time with your friends. Now, there is some time where I'll definitely be leaving the computer at home, and I guess like trying to forget about that with my friends. And there's times where I just need to be here alone working for a few days straight sometimes, to be honest, getting stuff done. So I think for me, like everything revolves around like what I'm doing at the moment. It's like, everything revolves around the next 3 YouTube videos that I'm going to create. That's just always been my life. It's always been what I've done. I'm trying to build stuff. I'm trying to do things I'm proud of. And I've just never really found myself entirely happy and comfortable when I'm like sitting there watching, South Park or something. Do you know what I mean? Like I love it. I love it. But like, I'm never like fully fulfilled as when I'm like in the zone, like sitting here, like editing something that I know is going to be epic and that stuff. So yeah, I think I'm always going to be putting the time in. But then like when the boys want to hang out, like we're hanging out, like we're doing stuff, and that's also really fun. And I'm really lucky in that I just kind of get to decide what I want to do whenever. And I don't really have a boss. I don't really have anyone telling me what to do, which is awesome. But I still find my way back here to this computer to do work, like literally every day. Like there's not a day that goes by that I don't sit here and do some kind of work, or at least emailing people off my phone or something like that. And yeah, the running has been really good. I've really been enjoying that. So I've just been trying to increase my fitness a little bit, because I've been lifting weights for a few years, and that's been a lot of fun. Like it's been 10 years now that I've been in the gym consistently. But I felt like I was really missing like another part of like my fitness. And it was just like setting a goal and just being like, oh, I want to be able to run this fast at this amount, like this distance in this amount of time. And I don't know, that's been a really good escape as well, and a good release for me, because you can't sit here all the time. You need to be outside doing stuff. And so that's why I'm not completely white. I've actually been going outside. So that's good. So yeah, I'd say it's like how I think about splitting up my time, I would say is I try to work at least 4 hours a day in whatever capacity. And then I try to exercise for at least an hour a day. And then everything else, I guess, is just, it's either or. It's either doing more work if I think I need it, or it's going to see my friends. Yeah, it's really just like whatever I feel like doing, and it's kind of cool actually. A lot of people, I say to a lot of people, when people ask me, when are you free? I say to a lot of people, well, like I'm kind of free all the time, but also I'm busy. So it's like, it's kind of weird. It's like I'm free all the time, but I'm also really busy. So I don't know. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing. I've certainly found a lot of my friends. I also run a freelance type business, and a lot of my friends who are living traditional lives just don't get it. If you haven't lived this lifestyle, it's hard to relate to that sort of way of time. So I completely get it.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of time, and I really appreciate your time, Mitch. I wanted to ask you one final question before we close up, and that is 2021. Of course, 2020 was a really shit year for a lot of people, and a lot of people were really struggling. And 2021, hopefully, that like new beginning, that fresh bit of air as the world starts to get towards normal. Hopefully, if we could wave a magic wand and anything was possible, where would you like to be in a year's time? Your YouTube channel, your creative work, like what do you see coming in the next year for Mitch Lally?
I say like I have these goals that are attached to like numbers, amount of subscribers I would like to have, or amount of views that I would like to have on my videos and stuff like that. But it's when I get down to it, it's not really the output or the outcome that I want to get out of what I'm trying to do with my YouTube channel. I guess what I'm trying to do with the channel is exactly what I told you guys before, is just being an example of, here's a guy who did it. He made his passion, his, creative outlet, his career, and there's no reason why you can't do it. And not just that, here are some ways that you can. And so the main thing that I want to get done this year, that I really hoped to get done last year but didn't quite get there because of obvious reasons, is create, like, kind of just condensing everything that I know and that I've learned into one digestible piece of content. So at this stage, it's looking like I'm going to be creating an online course. So that's something that I really want to do this year. And that's sort of the only goal I have, really, is just giving back to the community and helping other people to get to that, I guess, level. But also, at the same time, I want that course to be able to reach as many people as possible. So I'm also thinking about, I want to get a lot of views and I want to get a lot of subscribers on YouTube. So, I mean, I'd love to get to 50,000 subscribers. I know it's not that far away from where I'm at the moment. So I'm really excited about that. And I guess just making more videos that I'm proud of, and maybe actually making more creative stuff actually, because I feel like a lot of what I've made so far is just, hey, here's me doing a shoot. Bang, bang, bang. Here are the photos. Hope you guys like it. Whereas I would like to, I guess, put more thought into my shoots going forward. And I guess have more of an idea, like, this is what I want to create. This is my idea. And this is how I'm going to go about it, and then show the sort of process. So I guess those two things, probably most important things that I'm thinking about right now. So yeah.
Well, that's amazing, and hopefully that magic wand does get waved and you get every single one of those little goals. I'm certainly looking forward to that online course whenever it does come out. But, just in terms of, on behalf of your whole community, Mitch, I wanted to say thank you so much for everything that you do. I certainly have learned an incredible amount from you, and will certainly be keeping my eyes in your direction to just soak up as much as I possibly can. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Barry said, we really are very appreciative of it, and what better guest to kick off 2021 than the one and only Mitch Lally. Thanks so much for joining, man.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun chatting to you guys, and yeah, hope to do it again soon.
Amazing. Barry, shall we look at the week that was?
Let's do it, Chad.
The week that was.
Barry, I'm so glad we had kicked this podcast off with our first guest for 2021, and what an epic little segment. I thoroughly enjoyed having him on.
Likewise, Chad, and I hope that everyone listening and watching at home really got something out of his work.
Yeah.
We'll drop all his links in the description, so go and support him. He really is a very talented creator, and he's got a lot of cool stuff. So if you're into creativity and into that sort of stuff, please go and check his work out. He really is superb, and really cool that we on 3 different continents, Chad, from Africa to Europe to Australia. What a crazy across the pond moment.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So now we're on the week that was, Barry. Let's chat about this chaos that has been the first little taste of 2021. And I mean, we're looking at the basically the guiding light of democracy around the world, just completely crumbling this past week.
Such a crazy story, Chad. I remember I was having one of those days where I was a bit tired. I was getting to the end of my day, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go and have an early sleep. I'm going to get some good sleep in.
Yeah.
I know how important sleep is, so I went and lay in my bed. And as most of us do, I just was going to scroll for a little bit just to see what's happening in the world. And so I went onto Twitter, Chad, and I'm scrolling, and all of a sudden I see this video, this crazy scene of these thousands of Trump supporters storming the US Capitol building in what looks like a zombie movie. They're climbing up on the walls. They got ropes going over the top. They're breaking through windows. Absolutely crazy scenes. And basically what transpired was that there were thousands of these Trump supporters who were trying to disrupt the certification of the election results. So all the senators were inside the building certifying the fact that Joe Biden is going to become the next president of the United States. But the Trump supporters have still not conceded the election, and they wanted to stop this happening. And so they stormed the Capitol building. And like you said, this building is iconic. Like, it's that iconic home of modern democracy. And to see it being ransacked and violated and broken into was just insane, Chad.
Yeah, certainly staggering. I mean, I was still busy working and, just working in my zone, in my focus. And I get these push notifications pop through, and who is it? Oh no, it's Barry. Barry just flooding my inbox with these Twitter, as kind of real-time moment, because I suppose that's how we get news these days, especially when you have people who are actually inside the Senate, who had a full-on session that was in progress, and are now busy lying down on the floors with kind of gas masks on, busy tweeting from the floors. So just that moment of receiving all those tweets from you, Barry, and getting kind of pulled out of the focus on the work that I was busy with. It certainly is a moment that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, because, like you say, this kind of actual happening is just something we've never seen before. And, following on, we've seen a whole bunch of actions taken against Trump, who a lot of people said, may have slightly kind of pushed this thing to happen.
I think slightly is very generous there, Chad. I think he definitely incited this stuff with the kind of things that he'd been saying. You can't for the last month or so say the election is a fraud, and keep repeating this rhetoric and expect nothing to happen, especially when he was kind of glorifying this idea that America was going to stay strong and they were going to use the will of the people and they were going to make sure the Democrats don't steal this election. And so the Stop the Steal kind of hashtag really was the guiding call here. And unfortunately, Trump has found himself in the place where basically everyone has left him. His favorite news channel, Fox News, has kind of cut ties.
Yep.
And this week, Mike Pence cut ties, because basically what happens in the US is that the vice president kind of looks after the election results, because it's a conflict of interest to have the president kind of be that person. So Mike Pence was the person who was in charge of certifying these results. And Trump was saying to him, stop it. No, like, it doesn't matter what the votes happen. We need to cull this election. There was lots and lots of fraud. We need to kind of cut it and start again. And Mike Pence wrote this amazing letter saying, listen, American democracy doesn't work like that. And this is the will of the people. You've had 60 different lawsuits go to courts all around the country, and there's been no evidence of widespread fraud. And so Mike Pence, the vice president of the United States, kind of cut ties. And that for Trump, I think, was the last straw of, like, he's now fully isolated. And so, he kind of came on, and with some pressure, he kind of said, we don't want to have violence, we please go home, etc. But in a way, in a video, we also said, we still love you and we still believe in the American people, and this very mixed messaging, as opposed to saying, listen, guys, this is ridiculous, go home, do not, why are you protesting this thing? So I think that is why the chaos happened, and then the social media companies, Chad, decided to have their say.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fascinating part for me is, for a long time, Trump's kind of messaging platform of choice has been Twitter. It is his way of communicating to the rest of the world. We're talking about world leaders. We're talking about really important global issues just being fired off with a little tweet. And Twitter banning him is just a crazy thing to see. Like you say, you've got this period of time now, Barry, where he's finding himself completely isolated from the rest of the world. We're talking about all sorts of social media platforms and services, all completely banning him. And the crazy thing for me at this point is that he still is the current president.
How bizarre is that, Chad? If you were to see this in Venezuela or Africa or Russia, it would kind of make sense. It'd be like, okay, cool, coups happen every now and then. This is kind of what happens. They silence political opposition. But this is the United States of America, and the sitting president is now not allowed to tweet. It's absolutely bizarre. Can you imagine, Chad, being in that room at Twitter, with Trump being probably your number one traffic generator, right? Trump is what's kept Twitter relevant, to be brutally honest, for the last 4 years. And it is the reason that Twitter has become such a big part of politics, is because Trump has built his whole brand and his whole communication platform, like you say, on the platform. So it's a huge decision to decide to permanently ban him from the platform. And it obviously has huge ramifications. I think a lot of people are very happy about it because they don't want to see Trump being able to speak to his supporters and the glorifying of violence and all the stuff that he's done in the past. But there's also another side of the coin here, Chad, and talking about freedom of speech and how much power people like Twitter, companies like Twitter have in being able to silence people at their whims. And the whole idea of freedom of speech is that you're supposed to be able to say whatever you want, right? You're supposed to be able to have that free voice, and that's what America is built on, is being able to kind of speak your voice and speak your truth. And it is a huge, huge deal to ban the president of the United States from a free speech perspective. It's very strange.
My gosh, what a crazy time, Barry, and crazy chain of events, really. I hope we don't ever have to see those kind of pictures of people's ransacking the Capitol ever again. Barry, let's talk about something that affects us on a day-to-day basis. We communicate predominantly through a platform that is owned by Facebook, one that is called WhatsApp. And for a long time, we, even on this podcast, have questioned, what is their plan here ultimately? What is their plan with this app that is not monetized, that has no adverts? Why is this part of the Facebook arsenal? And we've seen a privacy policy this week that's kind of gives us a little bit of a glimpse into that.
And Chad, I've got a big confession to make, because I fell victim to the same thing that I hate on every single week, and that is reading headlines.
Yep.
And so I saw all the headlines about this WhatsApp privacy policy, and I didn't read the articles at first because I just assumed that this policy meant that they were finally going to start looking at our chats and start selling us advertising based on what we're talking to our friends about. And I think a lot of people have done that. And that's why I wanted to bring this story up, is to kind of just remind people to please read the article and not just the headline. Because the privacy policy, of course, is a big discussion point, and it is a dangerous one because it looks like it could be a slippery slope. But as far as I understand, what is happening in this privacy policy is all that they're doing is they are now kind of taking some of the personal data from your WhatsApp account, and it's now going to be linked to a Facebook account if you have a Facebook account. So things like your contact list, your phone number, your profile picture, some diagnostic data as to how you use the app, etc., etc. And that information is now going to be shared with your Facebook account, which will all be connected in the Facebook family. The chats themselves, the actual conversations with your friends and your family, are going to stay completely encrypted, and no one can read that. So that is the key thing to get here, is that this is not your chats are not all of a sudden now out in the ether. The encryption is still in place, and it's more the surrounding data that's being sucked up.
Yep.
That doesn't mean it's a good thing. It still is worrying. But unfortunately, if you have a Facebook account at the moment, a lot of the stuff they're already doing, there's very little new here. And so if you're living on Facebook and on WhatsApp at the moment, this privacy policy does not change that much about how much data is being transferred. But what it does do is it starts this conversation about, like you say, as they move on the road to monetization, is this a slippery slope? Are we getting to a stage where they're going to start taking chances or start kind of pushing the boundaries on the privacy between your Facebook account and your WhatsApp accounts? And if so, a lot of people are going to be looking to switch messaging platforms, which is a whole another kettle of fish.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I like the kind of stressing what this is, Barry, and what this is not. And like you say, your messages are still encrypted. But I think it is important to understand what it is that they're doing with your data. And like you say, the data that lives on your phone outside of the ecosystem. So, of course, within Facebook, we know they have access to your friends list. Of course, it lives within Facebook. But to have access to your actual contacts that are stored on your phone, it just gives them an extra data point to potentially get extra kind of advertising information for you. So obviously, Barry, you've got a Facebook account. I've got a Facebook account. We both load our numbers on our Facebook account, and we've now got WhatsApp accounts too. They know how frequently you and I interact because they have got access to that information. They don't know what we're saying, which is important, but they know that we frequently interact, the time of days, all of that kind of stuff. And using that information, using my interests that they also gain from Facebook, using your interests that they gain from your Facebook, they're basically piecing together much more of a better picture as to essentially what might work in terms of advertising on you or me.
Exactly. And that's the tricky thing about this. That's why this is such an ethical dilemma, because theoretically it's going to make our experience better. It's going to make those ads more relevant. It's going to make our experience, hopefully on Facebook, I'll see more from the people I actually interact with on a day-to-day basis, and not those high school friends that I met 10 years ago and I've never spoken to again. You know, all those thousands of Facebook friends that we call them, which actually we don't care about what's going on in their life. So the question we really have to ask is that worth it? Is the benefit of that slightly improved experience worth giving up that extra data? And a lot of people think that it isn't. And I, for one, am a little bit worried about it. I'm not as worried as I once was when I was just reading the headlines, but I'm still a little bit worried about where this is going. And I've been looking into some other apps, but the difficulty is if you want to move to an app like Signal, like a lot of people are trying to do, how do you convince everybody that you know to move to a new app? One of the best things about WhatsApp is that everybody that I talk to is on WhatsApp. And so it's one of those things where it's so convenient. I don't want to have 6 different messaging apps for different people and have to look at them all periodically. I don't want to do that. So it's a hard social thing to say, cool guys, we're all going to drop WhatsApp, and at the same time we're going to move everything to a new app. It's not that easy.
Barry, do you want to make a heck of a lot of money? Why don't you invent an app that has a whole bunch of APIs that integrate to all of the various messaging platforms, right? I mean, that's ultimately the perfect solution that we need and we want.
No, but Chad, they're all encrypted, so you can't read from the API. That's the whole point. So you're never going to be able to see those messages, unfortunately.
Fair enough. I feel like such a noob now. Barry, we've got some important stuff to chat today about self-development and learning a bit more about some of the triggers and things that happen within us. Let's talk about Develop and Grow.
Develop and grow.
Right, Chad. So the 2021 year of reading is kicked off with a banger, and I've just finished the first book of the year, which is this book I'm holding up for the YouTube viewers, called Lost Connections. And it's written by a guy called Johann, and it is one of the most moving books that I think I've ever read. I found it almost emotional in some instances, because it talks about the world of depression. It talks about the world of mental health. And of course, it's something we talk about a lot on Across the Pond, because it's something that is so relevant for so many people, us included, Chad. Like, mental health is such an important conversation to have. And I think that the depression is something that really ravages our society, but kind of lives in the shadows. A lot of people don't want to talk about it because it's difficult to talk about it. It's complicated. It's confusing. It's icky. And so, unfortunately, it's something we don't talk about around the dinner table. And what books like this do is try to bring that conversation to light and try to bring it up as normal conversation, so we can actually deal with these problems instead of just ignoring them.
Yep.
And so I found it an amazing book. I've never really read anything about depression before, even though I've gone through very dark periods in my life, which I think was depression, and I called it depression at the time. I've never really read up much about it. And this book really gave me a good sense as to the debate that is currently raging in the academic community between two different things. And this is kind of the crux of the book. Is depression a brain chemistry thing? So is there something broken in your brain, some sort of chemical imbalance that needs to be fixed with chemical antidepressants so it's out of your control?
Yep.
Or is depression a societal thing where you maybe your social circumstances are not going the way you want it to, your life is not turning out the way you want, and that is then impacting on how you feel? And that debate is a very complicated one. I'm not nearly qualified enough to determine what that is. But we've seen, like, on both sides of the coin, good and bad. On the sides of antidepressants have worked for a lot of people. They've really helped millions and millions of people around the world. But we've also seen the extreme of it, where they often be overprescribed and have ruined lives as people get addicted to these drugs, or they become a crutch, or they become something that they rely on in order to function in your day-to-day life. So that's the one side of the coin. And then the societal side, there's one side of this personal development thing of, cool, we can take control of our lives and we can improve things and we can really get better and get happier, and that's a great side of that side of the coin. But then there's the extreme side of that, where unfortunately you get to this self-help guru stage where there's all these positive thinking and all of this nonsense that kind of can get addictive and can get really, really into your psychology. And then if your life doesn't change, you feel like a failure anyway, and you kind of get even worse down the cycle. So it's so complicated, Chad. But this book, for the first time for me, laid it out in such a compassionate way, in such a well thought out way. It wasn't trying to patronize you. It wasn't trying to say this is the right answer or this is the right answer. It really dealt with it in a very, very interesting way. And that's why I wanted to talk about it.
That's amazing. I'm definitely keen to dig into it more, just to kind of get what you got from the book specifically, Barry. But you're so right. A topic that is incredibly important, that one of depression. I think for a lot of people who have not been clinically diagnosed as being depressed, it's something that a lot of people just can't understand and can't empathize with if you've never been in that really dark place. And so the consequence of that is you do get all of these alternate theories of what causes this, and whether it is, like you say, chemicals that can be fixed with medication, or whether there is something else intrinsic that needs attention. But I've certainly empathized with the stories of a lot of friends of mine who I'm very grateful for actually opening up on this topic to kind of give me a bit of oversight and just ultimately arm me as well for the eventuality that is essentially at some point in time life circumstances don't happen in the way that they should, and potentially you land up in this depressive state, hopefully with a little bit more information than you had before.
Definitely. It's one of those things that if we do it on our own and we think we're the only person going through this, it can be absolutely demoralizing. It can destroy your life. And unfortunately, it does destroy millions of lives across the world. But if you're able to talk about it, you're able to connect with other people, you realize that this is a common thing. Unfortunately, in today's world, in this very advanced brain of ours, we still have these psychological barriers and these psychological cycles that we go down when things aren't going our way. And of course, there's a difference between sadness and depression, and it's very controversial as to what depression actually means. But the way the book kind of describes it, which I really love, is that breaking it down to its simplest form, depression is just a form of grief for connections you don't have. So these connections could be to other people, they could be to yourself, they could be to nature, they could be to meaningful work, they could be to a hopeful future, etc. It's this feeling of lack, or I don't have what I need to be psychologically stable and to be happy. Right. And I think it's something we can all relate to. We all have gone through those stages in life, and a lot of us are going through it right now in the midst of 2020's chaos. we've got a hole in our life. And whether it's because we're single, we don't have a partner, or whether we're in a job that we hate, or whether we just don't have the life that we thought we were going to have, or whether it's financial, or all of these things that impact on our happiness, it's that lack that we think of. And that is kind of the grief of depression. And that's what really stood out to me, Chad, is that I've never heard anyone describe it like that to me. This lack that we can try and work to fix. And so, spoiler alert, the book kind of says that antidepressants as a chemical solution are overprescribed and they are overemphasized versus the social circumstances of trying to fix your life and trying to move your life in a way where you can get connected to those things that you're missing out on. And I really love that, and it really resonated with the way that I've gone through my dark periods in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's a wonderful sort of definition, if you'd like, because what it does do is it forces you to introspect and figure out what is it that you're grieving for? What is it? Where are your connections lacking? And ultimately, you can then make a concerted effort to try and build connections in those particular spheres. Now, obviously, certainly a lot of the time it's easier said than done, and a lot of the time it's not like you haven't tried to build connections, but they're just not happening. And especially in some of these topics that you mentioned, Barry, life partners, work, all of this kind of stuff. This is not really trivial, easy things that we can fix by just making a little bit more of an effort. But it certainly does give us at least a little bit of hope, I guess, and a little bit of a path towards making ourselves feel a little bit better over time.
It's more empowering of a story. That's what I find, and that's what's so powerful about it in my mind. Because one of his major criticisms of the whole chemical antidepressant kind of movement we've seen in past years is that it disempowers the people, because it kind of says to you, your brain is broken. Sorry for you, your brain is broken. Therefore, take these pills for the rest of your life in order to feel some sort of stability. And that completely tears that autonomy and that freedom of choice and that empowerment away from those people, because they then end up telling themselves, okay, I'm a broken person. My brain is broken. And so it's such a fine line, because those drugs definitely do help. But when it comes down to changing your life and making the kind of shifts in habits and shifts in people around you and those sorts of things, like you say, it's incredibly difficult, especially when you're in a dark place. It's very easy for us to say, okay, cool, go and make new friends. And then you're sitting there like, what the hell? How the hell am I supposed to do that when I'm absolutely miserable all the time? But it does mean that you've got a route. You've got a path that you can take control of if you want to. And you can really feel empowered to say, cool, I can now see the holes in my life. I can see where I've got lost connections. How on earth do I go and connect in those spheres? And that is when you can start reaching out to people, where you can start reading about things. You start looking for professional help from psychologists or whatever the story is, counselors, that sort of thing, to try and get you out of that hole. And I'm not saying it's easier at all. I mean, I know people have suffered way more than I have. But I've seen in my own life is that when I do the difficult work and I actually stare the dragon in the face and I actually realize, what is it that is causing me to be so miserable? And when I actually name it and I write about it, I journal about it, I talk to friends about it, all of a sudden the dragon doesn't look as big anymore. And it starts to shrink and shrink and shrink. And you start to realize that you can make choices in your life that can move you towards a better space. And that's all we're trying to do. All of us are trying to just move in the right direction. And we go through ups and downs, and we get off the path, and we get back on the path, and we go through all these bits and pieces throughout our life. But I think it's a great framing of realizing that in our darkest periods, it's not that we are broken people. It's not that we are inevitably going to stay there for the rest of your life. It's not that your brain doesn't work anymore and that's why you can't get happy. It's more a social thing around your lifestyle is not the way it should be or could be, and there are steps you can take if you choose and if you have the work ethic and the motivation and the way to move forward is to acknowledge that lost connection and then try and fix it.
Yeah, and I think one of the hurdles that I think is stopping a lot of people is the stigma that surrounds mental health more broadly, and specifically depression, because of the fact that a lot of people just haven't understood it. They've been in fortunate positions where things do work out as planned, but unfortunately that's not how it works for the rest of us, right? And so to remove some of the stigma as well and start talking about some of these things, I think will pull down that hurdle ultimately that starts to let people have these conversations. And like you say, Barry, the kind of ability to have a conversation with a friend, or I suppose even in that professional setting of talking to a counselor or psychologist is so helpful for people, because ultimately a lot of the time you're talking yourself down in your own head, And it's only when you start to have these conversations to kind of hash out these concepts, make sense of what it is that you're thinking, that you start to get clarity, right? You start to gain perspective, even more importantly. So yeah, hopefully we can remove some of that stigma, which will lead to more conversations, which we all, of course, need. And it's a key part of us.
We are social creatures, whether we like it or not. And so that's how we get through things. We talk through things. And the females have already figured this out. Our female friends have already figured all of this out. It's us men that struggle with this a lot, is being able to open up and talk about things that show weakness or show vulnerability or show moments where we aren't the macho, strong men that we all want to be. And so I think it's something that, as men specifically, I'm really passionate about trying to talk about and trying to bring to light, is because we're not that good at it. But the whole world needs to get better at this communication. And that's what this book kind of talks about, is that the way the 21st century works is that we've all isolated ourselves. We don't know our neighbors anymore. We don't know the people in our community. We're very, very isolated. And we are the loneliest generation ever, because we just aren't living in those communities we used to live in generations gone past. And what that has done is it's made us think that we're the only person going through this. It's made us believe that when we're sitting on our couch at home on a Friday night without no one to care about us, we think we're the only one. And the sad thing is that probably in your apartment complex, there's probably 10 other people sitting there doing exactly the same thing. And so that's where this connection means so much. And whether it's going to join some sort of activity, whether it's going to start a new hobby, whether it's connecting with people online, whatever it is, we have to reach out and connect. In a professional sense, definitely, but also in an informal sense with people that are around us or friends of ours or whatnot. If we don't connect and we don't talk about these things, no one's going to figure it out for you. No one's going to kind of come into your brain and read your mind, right? You have to be brave enough to say, listen, I feel terrible. I feel like I'm in a dark hole, and I just want to tell someone about it. And if someone is a good listener and you've got a friend who cares about you, that's what they want to hear from you, because that's what they're there for. That is what they're there for. And so I want to encourage everybody, first of all, to pick up this book and read it if you're struggling and if you're interested in this sort of topic.
Yeah.
But more importantly, if you're feeling dark in a dark period, if you're feeling down, if 2020 has just battered and bruised you the whole year, phone a friend. Talk to somebody, like just vent, rant, shout at somebody, like get it out of your brain, because I promise you, the mere act of communicating it is going to be the first step towards realizing that the dragon isn't as big as you thought.
Absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Barry. Just a reminder for those listening, the book is called Lost Connections by Johann. And yeah, I completely agree with all of that stuff, especially given our current set of circumstances. I think we're all feeling a bit down in the dumps, right? So let's just be there for each other. Let's be there for each other. That's what the point is. Barry, that wraps up one heck of an episode, again, of Across the Pond. I've absolutely loved this one.
Season 2 is off with a bang here, Chad. 2021 is looking really good for the podcast. I really enjoyed this episode, and I hope you did too if you're listening or watching, wherever you are in the world. If you've come here because you're one of Mitch's fans, we welcome you, and we hope you'll stick around, because we love the kind of stuff, these topics that Mitch loves as well. And so I've really enjoyed it, Chad. Thank you for your time. And if you love the stuff, if you want to be involved in these kind of topics and conversations, please reach out to us. All of our social media channels are always open. We'd love to hear from you. And we look forward to coming back again next week, Chad, and hitting the ground running.
Yeah, absolutely. And just talking to that, Barry, as well, everyone can leave us a voice message as well, which is really cool. So in the show notes of every single episode, there's a little link there that you can click and send a little voice message to us. What do you want to see on the podcast? What did you enjoy? What didn't you enjoy? Do you have any specific things you'd like us to talk about? Communicate with us. We want to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, we'll see you next week.
Pond, across the pond with Barry and Chad.
He has a ton of following on Instagram and on YouTube. He's got he's got 14,000 subscribers on. Not subscribers. Wait.
Just past halfway through, so yeah.
Okay, sorry, Barry.
That's okay.
I mean, just in terms of, sorry.
It's okay, man. Take your time. There's lots of uncertainties, and there's there are a lot of. I need to restart my camera soon too.
Oh, cool. Do you want to do it now? So just let's talk then quickly about. Sorry, comes across really amazingly.
Sort of.
That sometimes we don't really resonate with. Sorry, let me start this again.
There's a big thing that I see a lot that holds a lot of. Oh, let me start again.
Start again, go for it. No worries. No worries.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's not just me.
Yeah,
My
I know.
gosh.
Dude, trust me. Like, if I was doing the interviewing, I would be worse than you, man. Like, you guys are awesome.
Plus, I'm also I'm fangirling as well from the other end.
Oh
of
yeah,
this.
yeah. Well,
Sorry,
I'm
man.
just reacting. I'm just reacting to what you guys are saying.
Kind of personal level. Just talk about your basically the way you're going to balance your year and your. Sorry.
All right. That's soon.
Yeah.
See
all
you
the
guys.
best, mate. Cheers, mate. Bye.
So if you're into anything creativity-based stuff, ban the sitting president of the United States from it is a huge deal to.
You're completely right. I mean, when you can, if you. Sorry, where am I going with this?
Is that sort of privacy being really violated, and is it really worth that lack of that side of the coin? But then there's the.
Been in that really dark place, and so you do get all of these kind of changing. Sorry, man.